Hi everyone, my name is Stella and I'm here to do a quick tutorial on how to create or generate a PBR texture set for your 3D artwork in ComfyUI locally on your computer versus creating the same texture and the same PBR texture set in Substance Designer manually from scratch, as you can see on the right side of the screen. The idea is to showcase when it might make sense to use something like this in an AI-generated format and when it actually does make sense to be in full control of what you're doing and be able to iterate on that texture that you have created in many different forms and ways, which I will also walk you through. Let me first go into ComfyUI. A few months ago, Ubisoft, the gaming company, actually collaborated with ComfyUI to create a model called CHORD that can generate PBR textures, meaning the base color, the normal map, the height map, the roughness map, and the metalness map from any type of square format image, which is pretty cool. The way this works is you need to use one workflow that helps you to generate actually a seamless image. If you have one, great. If you made one in Illustrator, fantastic. Then use that. But in this case, what I did is I downloaded Juggernaut XL Ragnarok as my checkpoint model. I placed a seamless tile node. I created a prompt, as you can see here. I set the texture size in the upscale latent node, and I used an actual image to guide what I wanted it to do. So I knew I wanted to have a checkered texture. So the more you actually have a vision on how this end result is supposed to look like, the better it will turn out. So I'm going to run this workflow now, and you can see how this checkered image guides the result of what's coming out here. Plus, of course, the text prompt. As you can see, it generated the image quite perfectly. Something like this was on my mind and it did a really good job putting it out. You can take this picture then and run it through the Ubisoft workflow, which you can download on their site. I linked everything in my article, and in my article I'm also listing the steps on how you can actually install this workflow. And with the latest version of ComfyUI, it is very, very easy. So then you run this and you really don't have to do much other than loading the image you actually want to run this workflow on to get your PBR textures. And voila, you have your PBR textures. Does a pretty good job. I have some feelings about the roughness map and the metalness map because, as you can see here, these crosses, they feel slightly metallic, like they are made with metallic paint. And this is stuff you cannot really translate. I don't think it can actually read metalness. I always have this map turn out quite black. This is it. This is how you can do that in ComfyUI. And as you can see, it's super practical, it's super fast. My graphic card is already considered older and it still works marvelously fast. Here's the thing though, I cannot easily adjust any of this. I could go to Photoshop, I could load a ComfyUI in Paint workflow, but it's honestly is quite tedious. And especially when you're doing textures, I feel you want to have the opportunity to iterate and to iterate very fast. So that said, that's actually not really a thing here at all. So this is where we should go to the software that I used to set up real textures, which is Substance Designer. And I've been loving this software for a long time now, even back in the day when it was still run by Algorithmic. As you can already see, tiles are here, everything is actually here. And I integrated some fun little additional things. Let me walk you through this quickly on how this is set up. I started with the tiles and the grid. For the grid, I used the tile generator grayscale. I just used a brick pattern. I set it to 16 by 16. I did not really change anything else. So if you look at this, it's quite a stale grid. Then I added a bevel. Then I'm feeding this to another Blur HQ grayscale to achieve the effect I wanted this to have. And I combine the directional warp node, and I'm changing the warp direction here with the Perlin noise. The Perlin noise has a scale of 10 and a little bit of disorder. So I get something like this, where not every tile just looks the same. From here on out, I have the white version, let's just say, and the inverted version because I needed to do different things. This is why I put it out both. Then let's go to our pattern that we have in place here. So this like little cross pattern on some of these tiles. The cross pattern, actually shout out to the Substance Designer team because they put out this really great video on how to make paint strokes. So basically that's their setup. That's not something that I came up with, but is a really, really good setup for making just brush strokes. First of all, feeding these to a tile sampler is not really the challenge. But let me just quickly disconnect this setup and then revert back to explaining this part. If we just feed it like this into a normal tile sampler that doesn't already have some adjusted stuff, then the pattern will just show up everywhere, right? So this would be the standard tile sampler setup. And you would be like, okay, cool, and now, this is all over the place. That's not really what we wanted. So instead, there's a few things. So you can set up the second pattern input and potentially put in something very different. So that's one option. We can also just create another transformation node and feed that. So basically doing horizontal mirror, a vertical mirror, and then feeding that second pattern. So we get to everything is in there again, but at least, some of them are in the one direction and the others are looking in the other direction. So that could be an option. Then it's still all over the place. And this is where these here come in really handy. So I connected these to the mask map input here. Doesn't do anything, but if you go below in the tile sampler to where we were before into color and you put mask map threshold all the way up to 1, this is what you get. So that's pretty cool. Gives you this random effect. So how did I do that? So for that we have to go back here. So after inverting this grid pattern into the inverted grayscale, I inverted it again. From here on, I used a flat fill node and I fed that flat fill node to flat fill to grayscale. And on the input, I added a clouds 1 node. So this gives it this randomized grayscale turnout. Then I added histogram scan and I played around with the contrast and the positioning. And so if you look at this, like I can completely, like just with a few drags here and there, I can completely change how this looks. And this is the power of Substance Designer. This is why it's often, especially if you're designing textures for something bigger, like a game or, something that entails an entire world, it feels this is still really very much worth going to. Because this is true power. So if you have one and the same pattern once set up, it means you can create endless iterations of the same thing, which is really, really cool and extremely powerful. As you can see, the flat fill to grayscale is actually what goes down here. So I'm feeding this to another histogram scan and I'm inverting again the grayscale to make sure these axes, they actually sit on the white pieces. Could also obviously, do faults, and then it would be the other way around. This is how this is set up. So then it becomes more interesting, I hope. At least for texture nerds, it becomes more interesting. So after the histogram scan, I'm setting up the gradient map because I want to capture these distinct colors that I had in mind for the tiles. Basically, the gradient map is meant just for the tiles, nothing else. Then in the blend node, I'm adding with it the rich color. So as you can see, the rich color has this light beige. So this is where this goes. And I'm using a levels node to make sure there is a very defined edge between the tiles and the rich filling. I don't know how this is called in English, to be honest. Then I'm blending those together. And the next part is blending it together with the little X's. So as you can see here, they are blended together. And then you're probably curious what all of this is about. So this is another powerful thing I wanted to show you. So if you finalize a Substance Designer texture, you can output it as an SBSR file, and that is more compatible with other types of software, be it Unreal Engine, be it Marvelous Designer, be it Blender. There are plugins, I think, for all of these softwares at this point and more. So this is where it becomes interesting to think about parameters, essentially settings of your graph that you output so it can be used and accessed in other software. So this is where the switch color or switch anything really becomes really interesting, because here, as you can see, I added this grunge leaks texture, and I'm essentially saying, hey, with the switch, I can have the user choose between this version of coloring or between the dirty version of these tiles. So that is what this does for you. So if I, put this out as a parameter, I get to say, hey, this is dirty tiles. This is clean tiles, dirty tiles, clean tiles. So you have a lot of power in just one graph. And I showed you before, you can change the placement. It's obviously also extremely easy to change colors this way. So if I want these to be, I don't know, mint green, and I want this to be, let's say, more pinkish, then that's fine too. And maybe I want to make sure that it's not gold, but this is actually, let's say, silver colored, then let's do that. My point is, you got so much control in this one graph to change between all types of different versions with just a few clicks. And this is what makes this tool, in my opinion, for someone who dedicates a lot of their 3D life to creating PBR textures, so necessary and not really something to be abandoned. Not trying to make advertisement here for Adobe. I'm trying to say there's reason when to use the ComfyUI flow that I just showed you, this one, and obviously the seamless image generation one. But there's also enough reason to stick and learn these tools. So my big point here is there is a use for ComfyUI texture set, something that's not in focus. This is a one-off thing and a quick fix for something, and something you don't need surgical changes to be made in the future on. And then there's a use case for Substance Designer or anything similar when the surface is close to the camera, when a texture belongs to a bigger world context story of a game, of an immersive experience, of anything like that. And of course, where you need to be able to do surgical changes, fixes by client's request, because that will be very, very hard to do with ComfyUI and the CHORD model. To showcase a little bit on how something like this could come together, I created a quick Blender scene with a bathroom, and using the tiling obviously very prominently to make sure it is in focus. I'm pretty sure I've overdone it here, to be honest. It was meant to show why you would go to the lengths of setting up a texture set in Substance Designer manually when there is now AI everywhere. And I think this shows it pretty well. Just looking at this, I know that I can make tweaks and whatnot at any point in time I want to. And this gives me, as a creator or as a designer, gives me peace of mind. So all resources and files you can actually find at the bottom of my article attached. So if you scroll all the way down, you will see files for you. Here is the link to the Google Drive. If you go there, these folders will open for you. One carries all the Substance Designer files. One carries all the ComfyUI workflows for dragging and dropping them into ComfyUI. And we actually do have the Blender file texture tests file and the bathroom scene in here as well. So feel free, download them, test them out, use them for your own projects commercially and your personal projects. Do not sell those files though, because that's not what they are intended to. I'm not giving them away for other people to sell them. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to my blog, and I hope to see you in another one soon. Bye!